business vocal enough? And to what extent are business taken seriously when they meet the president and other cabinet members and clusters, etc.? So our experience with the president and the presidency right now, and I don't think we've got time to go into individual ministries. Obviously, the economic cluster is very important for us. Okay. But it's not just the economic cluster. I would argue right now, from an investor point of view, that one of the most important ministers in our country is a 36-year-old minister. His name is Ronald Lamola, the Justice Minister. Now, why am I saying he's important? Because what we've heard repeatedly on roadshows from investors and would-be investors is your president has been in office for 24 months now. Okay. He came in on a ticket of stamping out corruption, but yet we haven't seen one high-profile name sit in the dock yet. Okay. And it's a valid point. But let me clarify that. We don't expect a president to start prosecuting people, because there are a few examples of that around the world, some in the Middle East and some in Latin America and some further north of our borders. Okay, I'm not going to go into which countries. But what we should be doing as business, and are starting to do, is advocating and agitating that the criminal justice system has to become a lot more vigilant and show some alacrity here, because one of the things that will really make a big difference this year, both leading up to the NGC and also from an investor confidence point of view, is if we start seeing some of these high-profile names being charged. Okay. So it's really up to us, the citizens of the country, also to agitate for that. Now, I know that the President, the Justice Minister, can't start unduly influencing the NPA and the SIU. But what we can say as a citizenry, NPA, etc., criminal justice system, prosecutional authorities and the likes, you are sitting, we read every day, with a mountain of evidence, but you're not doing anything with it. So where are all these people? Why have, for example, you're trying to extradite the Guptas from Dubai, right? But they haven't even been charged in the first place. How are you going to extradite someone when you haven't even charged him? It doesn't make sense to me. The Steinhoff matter. And I must just tell you, the corruption cuts across private and public sector. And I think what we're really strong at BUSA, strong about, is that it's not just public sector or government officials or ministers that you need to put in the dock. It's also the corporate sector. Steinhoff was hugely investor denting for our country. Some people will tell you more so than the Guptas. Because if you look at how much investment was lost and market caps of companies diluted because of the perception that the world had that the private sector in South Africa, listed companies, were so good on from a governance point of view. And then the Steinhoff thing happened, and every day it got worse. There's a massive loss of confidence around the corporate sector in South Africa that needs to be restored. And I must say, is there anyone from the auditing profession here? Okay. Our so-called Big Four have not endured us either. Okay. Okay, so these are the things that we as business are starting to become more vocal about. That it's not just state capture, there's also a corporate capture element that needs to be addressed with. And that in itself will start giving investors more confidence. So on that point, I also can't work out, because we can't prosecute Steinhoff executives because the matter is so complicated. It involves multiple geographies and tax jurisdictions. Like I said, I'm a pharmacist, but for me, if there's an accounting irregularity, if there's been off-balance sheet financing, surely to goodness, that's fraud. So what else do you really need? I'm not sure, sorry. So maybe, Michael, I'm missing something there, possibly, but these are the things that are making investors exceedingly nervous. Saying, well, you guys are not really serious. And we've told this repeatedly to President Ramaphosa. And we need to start seeing a step up from the NPA and the SIU. It will make a world of difference leading up. Okay, so I mentioned that we speak regularly to the President. He is committed to a once-a-month meeting, the first Monday of every month. He meets the PwC. The PwC is made up of a small group of people from business, labor, and civil society. And we put various things on the agenda with an idea where there are blockages, that the right people get put in the room to unblock those. But more importantly for me, it allows a quadruple dialogue that is otherwise not taking place in our country with respect to what are the key economic drivers we should be looking at. So I'm quite encouraged by that process. There's been about 3 or 4 meetings thus far. And in our interactions with the President in those meetings and outside of those meetings, we've put energy security, fiscal consolidation, SIE reform, as I mentioned earlier, the need for a proper growth blueprint, and importantly, the need to establish ethical leadership across the public and the private sectors. Those are some of the issues we've put on the table. Thematically, some of the areas we've addressed and will continue addressing, both in our Indaba and in these PwC meetings and beyond. We do have bilaterals with the President and the economic cluster from time to time. The important things thematically for us right now are 4R and managing it correctly so don't get further job losses. The critical sectors for economic growth, and as I said, to things like manufacturing, agriculture, agro-processing, tourism, those are quick wins. I mean, do you know that there's something like 80 million Chinese tourists? We only get, guess how many in South Africa? And when I say tourists, these are tourists on a holiday and also business people visiting. 90,000. Okay. It's got to be an opportunity. We're in BRICS, and there's got to be opportunities there. Okay, enabling a capable state, and of course, the structural reforms that the President needs to follow through on. How receptive has the President been? He's receptive from an access point of view. Some of the things we raise with him, he has started addressing, like, for example, the need to have the right person, for example, heading up the SIEs. He's been receptive to that. The issue around data fees, he's been receptive around that. So there are areas that he has been receptive around, but then there's a whole lot of areas that we are disappointed with. We, however, are going to be measured in how we articulate those. Because remember I said to you, the ruling party is highly factionalized. You also don't want to give ammunition to the wrong faction to sink a guy. So what I'm saying is BUSA's position is that he's the right person to lead this country, but we need to see quicker and more relevant action. A very important element in how receptive is the President is he shouldn't only be receptive towards us or engage with us. It's important that we have this alignment with COSATU and Labour so that we understand the political influences in the country that need to be marshaled in particular directions so that we start getting this growth trajectory. But all said and told, in this administration, there's been both improved access and improved quality in the type of dialogue that we've had. The previous administration, and Michael, you might have been in 1 or 2 of those meetings, they were nothing short of charades, to be honest. It was really exchanging pleasantries. The depth of the discussion was disappointing to the extent that many business people eventually gave up going to meeting. The problem with that is you start attracting the wrong business people, and then the trade missions that go overseas are also made up of the wrong people. Okay. What is on the radar for us this year as organized business? First of all, improvements in policy, including getting certainty in policy, and I gave one example, I could give many others, national health insurance and many others. A second priority that we are going to be heavily involved with is how do we get a more efficient state? And then, of course, how do we best address the fiscal crisis, the energy security issue, the SIE reforms, which we've started engaging on? What I said earlier, what role can we play in establishing ethical leadership across corporate capture? I keep saying this, it's not just state capture here, there's also an element of corporate capture. And then focusing on the sectors that I spoke about to enable us to grow the economy. Okay, I'm drawing to an end. Excuse me. There's been a lot of fascination in the media around what happened on the 3rd of February in the PwC around Eskom and what was presented by Labour. Well, I think most of you have seen Labour's plan that they put forward. I'm never sure how these things hit the media so quickly, but they do. And not that there was anything to hide in this occasion, but I think it is a public dialogue that needs to be held. Now, in that same meeting, organised business underlined the need for reform on all SOEs, not just Eskom, because there is a small matter of you don't want to get pushed towards a sovereign debt default. Okay. Not that I think we're there. I think it's an exaggerated point, Gina, and I'm not an economist, but we're nowhere near the levels of some other countries that I've seen. I know some people are saying, well, we're hairbreadth away from a sovereign debt default. That's not true. Okay, but does it weigh heavily on investor confidence? Yes. And that's how we've got to look at it. We agreed in that meeting that Eskom is the single biggest risk to the economy, and we are favorably disposed towards bringing in private equity as part of the solution. It's not what everyone wants, and it's a discussion we're going to have, and it's on the agenda for today's bilateral that I spoke about earlier. Okay, a key announcement by the President at Indaba was self-energy generation. We've had mixed messages, again, in the country on that, but I think the President was quite decisive and singular around that, and much of the detail of this was contained in SONA. And I can tell you, we sort of did a checklist after SONA, and of the things that we spoke to him about, around 70% of them found their way into SONA. So when we answer the question, well, how vocal is business, and is business being listened to, I'll let you make up your own mind on that. And also being vocal, I'm not sure means that you're in the press every day knocking the government. I'm not sure that's going to, because of what I said earlier. What you don't want to do is feed a frenzy to the other faction that he's not representing. So it can bring you in a bigger problem than you've got already. Are we comfortable that government is pushing through growth-friendly reforms? I think the answer to that is there are growth-friendly reforms, but the problem is in the implementation. It's in the communication, the Tower of Babels that I spoke about earlier. So I think that if we're able to get alignment across different ministries, if we're able to get the social partners working together, then I think some of the reforms, not all of them and not enough, will go some way to getting us to those 3% growth levels. Okay, lastly, there's always a question about how is the country looking prospectively in 2020, and are we likely to get South African business, are we likely to get non-South African businesses coming and investing? Okay. So this is what gives me a lot of confidence. Okay. Now, number one is we're still seeing the democratic institutions of our country, most of them functioning properly. And I am starting to get a sense that we might start seeing some people being charged. And I tell you that will make, and this is not my personal view only, but this is a commonly held organized business view. If you start seeing some of these people in the dock, it's going to disrupt this whole campaign, this sort of underground campaign that's simmering. And it's going to show or demonstrate to the rest of the world we're serious about rooting out corruption. Nobody wants to come and invest. And they tell you this directly. And they even mention people's name better than what South Africans know. No one wants to come and invest here if you know that the money is going to get stolen, or if there's going to be a misstep or a lack of governance. Nobody wants it. Start putting a few people in the dock, and I'm starting to get a sense that that's it. So it will make a world of difference. I think the mood will just lift in our country, and I think it's possible that this could happen. Okay, then the second thing is I have hope in some of the dialogue processes that we've embarked on. So for me, very optimistic around the Presidential Working Committee, because bringing all the social partners together, and you're starting for the first time, I believe, you're starting to address the disenablers that you're starting to see. Now, maybe you're going to tell me that I'm naive, but let me give you a couple of, in my daytime job is at a company called Aspen Pharmacare, and we've just put up a 3.5 billion rand investment in Port Elizabeth. It's going to be the global manufacturing hub for anesthetics. That's general, transdermal, local, and topical anesthetics. These are amongst the most complex products to manufacture. And who would have thought that good old Port Elizabeth could be the world's leading global hub for manufacture of these products? It's a big feather in the cap of the country, I believe. And now we're putting up this 3.5 billion rand investment, which incidentally is more than the entire industry's invested in the last decade. Okay. So that's a vote of confidence in this administration. The cynics will say, but you already had facilities anyway. Okay. But I think you've got to take the cynics from whence they come. Putting up a manufacturing pharmaceutical plant is one of the most difficult and complex things, because it's not like making clothing or textiles. Here, these are drugs. When you inject a patient with anesthetic, you've got to wake up in 2 hours. Okay? So it doesn't wake up, you've got a problem. It's an incredibly complex regulatory thing to do. So part of the regulatory steps that you have to follow are, for example, getting a site inspection, getting visas for German inspectors that need to come and inspect the facility. And you cannot believe in the first 18 months, everything that could go wrong went wrong. So German inspectors don't get granted a visa. Okay. The South African regulator puts the wrong date in the diary when they're supposed to inspect you. Okay. And it's like a litany, it's a comedy of errors, I kid you not. In the last 2 to 3 months, when we've had a problem, we dial in Invest SA, and the problem's sorted out. We had European inspectors that weren't supposed to apply for a visa. They did, and they were denied the visa. It was sorted out in about 12 hours. So I'm starting to get a sense that there is a bit of traction, a bit of movement. Are we there? Definitely not. But am I starting to see some improvement through, for example, a PwC process? I am starting to get that. Okay. But guys, what gives me the most hope of everything, and let me end off here, is always the case of, and I don't want to sound cliched here or colloquial or any other thing that I might be accused of later on. I honestly believe that our country's been through far worse times. I went to Wits University in the 80s, and you didn't quite feel it, but when you looked afterwards, when you introspected afterwards, you realized just how bad things were. Both economically, it's just that we were shielded a lot of the time from the economic realities. Socially, we were in a greater state of disrepair than we are currently. That's even taking all the GBV that's going on in our country and the crime rates. It's just that we weren't exposed to it. And I know that we've pulled through. And even some of the people, the politicians that are being targeted today, like our erstwhile public enterprise minister, okay, being targeted. I saw him the other day. I said, you know what? You've been through worse times in your life and you've prevailed. You'll prevail again. And I have no doubt we will prevail again. So this behavior that we're seeing in Parliament, I'm starting to see civil society, I'm starting to see the citizenry of the country rejecting it. Because very often it's deliberate to serve a self-serving agenda. And I'm starting to see pockets of emergence of servant leadership, which is really what we need in the country. So my closing and concluding remarks are, South Africans are wonderfully resilient. And when times are bad and things are looking bleak, just always look back on where we've come from. And also look at, even with 10 years of state capture, some of the progress that we've made. We often forget about that progress that's been made. Is it enough progress? Definitely not. But has there been progress? Yes. So there's been progress under state capture and difficult times. Imagine the value we will unlock if we're able to move away from that era into an era where we actually move into delivery mode. It's possible. It can be done. It requires an active business sector and an active citizenry in the country.